First, start by securing your thread to the hook and then wrapping your thread back to about the point of the hook. Snip off the excess thread. Now tie in a piece of extra small copper wire. Once that's secure, bring your thread back to about the point of the barb. The tail of the stimulator is going to be made out of elk hair. Trim off a few fibers and then stack them. Once they're stacked, secure them in right at the barb of the hook. The length of the tail is roughly the length of the gap of the hook. Once your tail is secure, begin to wrap your thread forward, securing down all the rest of the elk hair fibers on the shank of the hook. This is going to help keep our body consistent. Be sure that you have nice tight wraps around the shank of the hook, securing down all the elk hair before you snip it off. Now bring your thread back to the bend of the hook so that we can dub the orange ice dub onto our thread. Orange is just a popular color, but if you wanted to change it to yellow or red, certainly do so at this point. And once your ice dub is all secured to your thread, begin to wrap it forward about 2/3 of the way up the shank of the hook. On this particular fly, you want to make sure you keep it at 2/3 the length of the shank and no more, because we're going to need every bit of space up at the head of the fly. Now select a piece of brown saddle hackle that we're going to use that's proportioned to the fly that we're tying. Bare the stem and secure it in right at that 2/3 point. Now wrap it back to the bend of the hook. Once it's back there, we're going to use our copper wire and secure it down by bringing our copper wire to 2/3 the way up the shank of the hook and then secure it down. Now once it's secure, snip off the excess copper wire and the tag end of the saddle hackle. And now it's time to add the underwing. The underwing is going to be made out of some flashaboo. I'm going to trim off about 7 to 10 fibers of flashaboo, but I'm not going to count them. And I'm going to secure that to the top of the shank of the hook. The length of the underwing shouldn't go past the tail of the stimulator. Now for the main wing, we're going to use stacked elk hair. The length of the wing should not go past the length of the tail. Once we have that measured on our fly, secure it down once again at that 2/3 point. You'll notice that everything we have tied down so far is at that 2/3 point. It's only now when we start to bring our thread forward to secure in the elk hair. Now do your best to trim off any excess elk hair all around the head of the fly. Also take note that once we've trimmed everything off, we have a nice taper going down. However, our thread still ends up at that 2/3 point. Once you're back at that 2/3 point, secure in some grizzly saddle hackle. And now it's time to add some color to the head of our fly. For this, we're going to be using black ice dub. Simply add some to your thread and then wrap it around the head of the fly. You want to do this relatively sparsely, that way we're not going to bunch up the head. Once that is all dubbed on, you're going to notice that this is the first time we're going to bring our thread forward just slightly to tie in our legs. Once we have our legs proportioned, we're going to secure them in on either side of the fly. Once your legs are nice and secure, add a little bit more black ice dub to your thread, and then wrap it in between the legs, covering up the orange thread. At the end of dubbing, you should end up right behind the eye of the hook. And now it's time to wrap your grizzly hackle forward. We're going to take a couple wraps behind the legs, in the middle of the legs, and in front of the legs, which should end up right behind the eye of your hook. Once it's there, secure it down, and then snip off the excess. Once you've snipped off your saddle hackle, go back to the eye and trim off any small fibers that might be clouding up the eye. Now it's time to whip finish. Pull back the legs and whip finish right behind the eye of the hook. Once it's secure, snip off the excess thread. Now take a look at your legs and trim them down to shape. Make sure they're proportioned on either side. And once you have your legs all nice and trimmed up, you have yourself an Orange Stimulator.